While the gacha game genre itself is nothing new to the industry, its popularity has absolutely exploded in recent years, with more and more projects trying to replicate the global phenomenon of games like Genshin Impact. Many studios have tried to replicate the formula to achieve the financial success of their predecessors in the genre, but plenty have come and gone without much attention. Limbus Company in 2025 feels like a contradiction that somehow works. It is both a masochist's dream and a strategist's puzzle. A game that punishes shortcuts yet rewards devotion. A gacha title that turns its back on the usual temptations of whaling while somehow managing to thrive on loyalty instead of indulgence. 2 years after its release, it remains one of the strangest yet most captivating live service games in the market, and its uniqueness has only become clearer with time. For those unaware, Limbus Company is a free-to-play strategy gacha title released in February 2023. According to SteamDB, Limbus Company peaked at 115,862 concurrent players on Steam in July. The game's developers, Project Moon, confirmed that a further 135,000 players had jumped in on mobile, bringing the total amount of concurrent players to over 250,000. Limbus Company's 115,000 concurrent players make it one of the most played games on Steam this year. At its surface, Limbus Company is a turn-based gacha RPG, but that label does not do justice to how alien and intricate its systems feel compared to its peers. Project Moon has always been an outlier. Their earlier works, Lobotomy Corporation and Library of Ruina, already displayed an almost antagonistic design philosophy. Mechanics that seemed obtuse, tutorials that explained too little, and difficulty curves that demanded players either surrender or immerse themselves deeply until the opaque became clear. Limbus continues that lineage, but does so under the structure of a free-to-play gacha. It is the third entry in their shared universe, and while it can be enjoyed without knowledge of its predecessors, the threads of lore bind it tightly to that grim world known only as the City. Playing Limbus without knowing its past is possible, but diving in with familiarity of Project Moon's earlier works adds layers of resonance to every chapter. The story centers on Dante, a being with a clock for a head and the uncanny ability to turn back time to resurrect their companions, the Sinners. These 12 characters make up the entire cast of the game, each one drawn from literary and historical inspirations, but reimagined through Project Moon's peculiar lens. Unlike other gachas where a bloated roster of heroes grows endlessly, Limbus keeps the cast limited, focusing instead on variations of these 12. This has proven to be one of the game's most unusual strengths, giving players a chance to form long-term bonds with the Sinners, rather than replacing them with the next flashy release. Combat is where Limbus distinguishes itself most dramatically. To a new player, battles can look like chaos, skills chaining across the screen, coins flipping, damage spiking or fizzling seemingly at random. But beneath the noise lies an intricate system of clashing mechanics, probabilities influenced by sanity points, affinities tied to the 7 deadly sins, and resource management that forces constant choices between safety and risk. Every attack is a gamble, coins flip to determine power, sanity shifts percentages, and clashing requires predicting whether your attack can overpower the enemies. Unlike other gachas that devolve into auto-battle efficiency, Limbus demands attention. It is hard to learn, harder to master, and never truly free of randomness. Victories feel earned not simply because you deployed the strongest unit, but because you understood the probability landscape and manipulated it just enough to tip the balance. Losing too often comes not from weakness, but from the sheer unpredictability of coin flips, which only sharpens the desire to try again. Progression in Limbus feels strangely stripped down for a gacha. There is no endless spiral of gear grinding, no labyrinth of stat-boosting artifacts. Characters grow through levels and up-high ascensions, the latter unlocking new skills and passives that redefine their role in battle. Ego abilities, powerful manifestations tied to sin affinities, add a layer of ultimate-style decision-making, but they too avoid the pitfalls of power creep. What makes this system striking is its simplicity. There are no duplicate mechanics, no limit breaks requiring endless copies of the same character. A single pull of a sinner or ego gives you everything you need. Power is not gated behind your willingness to spend recklessly. This refusal to exploit whales is almost heretical in the gacha space, where most games depend on high spenders to stay alive. Instead, Limbus has built a progression system that emphasizes play, grind, and knowledge rather than spending, a decision that has earned it admiration and frustration in equal measure. The monetization model reflects this philosophy. Lunacy, the premium currency, is relatively generous, with paid currency counting fully as paid, no half measures as seen in other gachas. Daily discounted pulls, fair battle pass pricing, and shard systems to guarantee older characters make the game unusually friendly to free-to-play players and low spenders. Whales have little incentive here because there is no advantage to pulling endless duplicates. This decision has kept the game financially modest compared to industry giants like Nikki or Fate on Grand Order, but it has also preserved the integrity of its community. Limbus thrives not by chasing explosive revenue, but by sustaining loyal players who value its refusal to compromise. It is a model that could not work for every studio, but for Project Moon, whose entire ethos seems to be about making the game they want rather than the one the market demands, it fits perfectly. If combat and monetization are the bones, the grind is the blood that keeps Limbus alive, for better or worse. The Mirror Dungeon, a roguelike mode where players push through randomized floors for artifacts and rewards, has become infamous for its demanding length. Runs can take a long time, and while rewards are immense, battle pass levels, shards, and resources, it tests patience more than skill. The absence of a true autoplay system exacerbates this, forcing players to manually engage even in repetitive farming. Skips exist, but at a penalty, reducing efficiency and creating a sense that convenience is punished. This design choice reflects Project Moon's almost antagonistic relationship with its players. The studio seems determined to ensure that progress feels like effort, that shortcuts are never truly optimal. For some, this is the reason to quit. For others, it is the reason to stay. The grind becomes a ritual, a way of proving devotion, and in that devotion lies the satisfaction of incremental mastery. The presentation of Limbus Company complements its mechanics with a dark, stylized art direction. Its aesthetic is closer to Don't Starve than to glossy anime gachas, with cartoonish lines masking grotesque violence, unsettling imagery, and oppressive atmospheres. Fan service is almost entirely absent. There are no scantily clad characters, no titillating events designed to bait players. Instead, the game revels in its bleakness. For some, this is refreshing, a deliberate rejection of the cheap tricks often used to pad out content. For others, it feels alienating, as if the game refuses to indulge the lighter pleasures that make long-term engagement easier. Yet, combined with the fully voiced Korean dialogue and the density of its story, the presentation cements Limbus as a title that knows exactly what it wants to be: uncompromisingly dark, narratively ambitious, and uninterested in pandering. By 2025, the story has expanded significantly, reaching into later chapters that delve deeper into the city's districts and the sins of its inhabitants. Project Moon has maintained a steady cadence of updates, with new chapters, side stories, seasonal events, and alternate versions of the Sinners. Content pacing has been consistent if not spectacular, and while the seasonal cycle is predictable, new egos, new dungeon variations, new story beats, it has kept the game alive without overwhelming players. Importantly, past content remains accessible. Side stories are folded back into the main narrative as interludes, characters return through shard systems, and players who join late can still access much of what they missed. Though the Battle Pass exclusives do create some imbalance as time goes on. Looking at it now, 2 years after launch, it is remarkable that Limbus Company has endured. Many gachas burn bright and then vanish, but Project Moon's stubbornness, combined with its loyal community, has kept this game alive and distinct. It is unlikely ever to dominate sales charts, but it does not need to. It is a game that defines success differently, by immersion, by challenge, by storytelling, by the satisfaction of understanding a system that once seemed incomprehensible. In a market oversaturated with copycats and exploitative monetization, Limbus remains an anomaly, an experiment in how much a small studio can demand of its players and how much those players will give in return. To play Limbus Company in 2025 is to make a choice. You either commit, knowing the grind, the coin flips, the uphill battles, and the relentless complexity will never let up, or you step away, acknowledging that it is not for you. Neither choice is wrong, but for those who stay, the reward is an experience like no other in the gacha space. A world as cruel as it is fascinating, a cast of sinners worth investing in, and a game that demands your time but repays it with depth and resonance. It is not a perfect game, and it never tries to be. It is, however, unmistakably itself, and in a landscape of sameness that may be its greatest triumph.